If we don't talk about the hard things, then we're never going to get better. It doesn't matter if it's a mistake I made, it's a mistake you made, it's a mistake we made, it's a mistake the President of the United States made. It's holding ourselves accountable and showing like, hey, yeah, these things happened, people died, but how can we learn from this and how can we get better? Because the same mistakes that are happening now are the same mistakes that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. And unfortunately, we don't learn most of the time. And it's, how do we, as Americans, as American people, it's finding ways to serve our community and our neighbors to the left and right of us in a positive way so that we can ultimately better our nation as a whole.
Welcome to Aimpoint Taking Aim Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Nance. Here we'll take a deep dive into firearms culture and the Second Amendment lifestyle. From hunters to veterans, competitive shooters, police officers, tactical trainers, 2A advocates, and even some well-known celebrities, we'll cover it all. Today's guest is Tyler Vargas-Andrews. Tyler's a retired Marine sergeant who was very seriously injured in Afghanistan as the U.S. was pulling out from that country. There was several other service members that were injured that day, but Tyler's story is one of resilience, recovery, and advocacy. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. Hey, Tyler, thanks so much for joining us today, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Richard. How are you doing?
Yeah, man, I know that everybody wants to have you to hear your story. It's a very inspiring story in many ways, but I appreciate you telling that story, even though I know you're asked to tell it a lot, and it's probably, quite frankly, it probably gets old, but I appreciate you sharing your information that really you and very few people would have about what really went down that day. We see clips on the news and that's pretty much all we know about it. Would you take us back to that day and kind of let us know what you were doing and sort of what was happening that day?
Yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, like I said, thank you for having me, but I would, kind of to talk about what you said in that, I'm asked to talk about this a lot. But for me, it also kind of goes hand in hand with, I've got friends that aren't here anymore that were killed right next to me. Many of us do, and it's their story that I'm getting to tell in part, not all of it, but some of it. And some of those last moments, but, honoring their memory and continuing to tell the world the truth about what happened while we were overseas. So thank you again. I really do appreciate it. And I know for a lot of guys and gals as well, it's something that other folks can't talk about. And for me personally, it's, when I get an opportunity to tell my story and tell the story about what happened over there during the evacuation, it's never to make it about me, but it's to continue to share the story and the lives. And, as for whatever good or bad reasons, we go to war, we're in countries, that's not going to stop. That's the way the world works. And regardless of what anyone else thinks, service members, whatever countries they're in, whatever wars they're in, they're doing it for the man and woman to the left and to the right of them. And, maybe sound like a cliche saying, but it's the truth. So I appreciate the opportunity. And we, back in 2021 of August, we were on the Special Purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force Crisis Response. I was in 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, attached to Echo Company, which is the company that I actually came from originally when I was a rifle squad leader. I was part of a 6-man sniper team or stay team surveillance and target acquisition from 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines Weapons Company. We got attached back to Echo Company and leaving Saudi Arabia, sent over to Afghanistan. Unfortunately, we had watched the fall of Afghanistan along with the entire world over many months. Some might even say years, right? And but we were on that deployment, supposed to have been sent there 4 months earlier. Unfortunately, everything's televised in this day and age. And we sat there in the Middle East watching what was going on TV while we're right next door, waiting to help. And that wasn't for a lack of trying. Our command, the SP MAGTF command specifically, was continuously pushing on the Marine Corps and higher to get us to go over there earlier. We were told by our, direct leadership that it was higher than the Marine Corps that said no. Previous administration said that they didn't want to send us over there earlier. Not sure why, but
yeah, that was my question: is what would be the reason for that? But you don't know either. Huh?
Yeah, I at the end of the day, it's, in my opinion, it's just political. Hoping that we don't want Marines Marines on TV right next to the Taliban, hand in hand, and that's ended up being what happened. And unfortunately, we got there. We were told that it was going to be like the Alamo, and that was kind of like the prep to go in. They kept saying that over and over, like, "Oh, it's going to be the Alamo. It's going to be the Alamo." Went in there, no vehicles of our own. There were some. There was 82nd Airborne and Victor 1-8. And for the Marine Corps, Victor units, so just V1/8 or V2/1. Victor just is the, kind of the nomenclature for infantry battalions. But we were out there, Victor 2-1 and Victor 1-8. 1/8 came off of the MEU, and we flew in pretty much around the same time. My team was tasked with providing overwatch and conducting, observation and surveillance on Abbey Gate forward, leading up to the 26th. And we were there up until the 26th. I was there. I was in Afghanistan for 10 days before I got wounded, and the suicide bomber stepped out and killed everyone. So it's that was my first time overseas in a combat zone. So it was something that we had all, we trained. I'd spent 4 years, my entire career in the Marine Corps training to do that. And it was something most of us who had been around for many years, or a few years rather, had wanted to do, and we were excited about doing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. The experience and the Marine Corps specifically has given me the people I love the most in my life, whether directly or indirectly. And, I'm proud to say that I served with some of the best. And so on August 26, 2021, and the last couple of days were the worst leading up to that. We watched women, jumping at razor wire and trying to cut their throats open because they didn't want to get sent back out to the Taliban when, we had to send them away because the State Department told us to. Whether that was they didn't have visas, they didn't have passports, proper documentation. Marines watching babies get thrown over 12-foot walls and barbed wire and hit the ground and die on impact. And the days leading up to that, it was crowds trampling kids, like men, women, children alike. And quite literally killing them in front of us, and kids, families dying of heat exhaustion. And if it wasn't that, it was, there was a Taliban checkpoint 155 yards in front of our sniper tower is what we call it. And it was our tower, and then like the canal to the left. And then the Baron Hotel where the British were, their command was. So it was right in front of us, 155 yards. The north of our tower, I guess, rather, into the city, that Taliban checkpoint was just filled with, every day building up armored vehicles, whether it was Hiluxes, and then it quickly became mounted Dishkas or PKMs on the back of trucks, and then it became MRAPs and Humvees, and it became our vehicles. And then we saw Taliban standing in front of us, right side by side, being forced to work with Marines, wearing, carrying M4s, rocking the same plate carriers from back in the day. Some of them had better gear than some of the Marines down there. It was pretty absurd to see. Guys were breaking down. The bottom of our tower, I've said it before, but the bottom of our tower kind of became a safe space for a lot of, whether young or old. I think in our unit, and our company specifically, but in our unit, there was, if I had two hands, I could count on two hands, like the amount of people in our unit that had been there, done that, had been to war. And it was just, peacetime Marine Corps, right? For lack of a better term.
Tyler, how many Marines were there that day?
There was, I would say there was probably about 2 platoons worth. We had them staged at the last quarter mile up to the gate. So they were staged, swapping off every 12 hours. Our team, sniper teams, are 24/7 continuous operations. So we lived at the gate. We were there. Half of us would be spotting and, on the gun or whatever. And then half of us were down, pulling out families, pulling out refugees and whatnot. So, when the blast went off, there was probably like I don't know, 60 people around there, like 60 Americans, like out in the open, maybe, not in the open, I guess, but out in front of the gate. But
Sure.
we were all flooded around the tower and the gate because the gate was connected to our tower. So, quite a lot. And that's obviously, there were 45 Americans wounded total. And so I think there was about 8 or 9 of us that were critically wounded. And, myself being one of them, Corporal Kelsey Lanehart, she's paralyzed. And then, David Traylor, Ramel Finley, Wyatt Wilson, there's a few of us that were, kind of a little worse off than some of the others, just physically, I guess. But yeah, it was unlike anything. I mean, obviously any of us had ever seen. And some of the older guys like Staff Sergeant Darren Hoover, who was killed next to me, he had, been to Afghanistan once or twice before, kicking indoors and whatnot. And I remember our conversation when he came to grab me from the tower that day as we're walking out of the gate for the last time. He was like, I've never seen anything like this. This isn't like any deployment I've ever been on. And I was like, yeah, I had been on a deployment before that, but it wasn't to a combat zone or anything like that. It was training with partner forces in Australia and Japan and South Korea. And so, he's telling me that, a guy who's been to combat and, been there and done that a couple times. And I'm like, yeah, I don't even know what to think. I don't know anything else. And so we're just there. Day in, day out, Marines just tirelessly. You might be working 12 hours on and then sleeping for an hour if you're, in the line platoon or something. And, but it was hard for anyone to sleep because, the guys who weren't at the gate, all they want to do is get back and help. Yeah. And then, or they're sitting there next to it. Or for us, we're sleeping at where we're operating. And we're listening for 2 weeks, just days on end, all day and all night, like children screaming, like men and women sobbing, just people breaking down, Marines breaking down. And then Marines, like I said, Marines would come to the bottom of our tower. They'd step inside, they'd sob in their hands, put their helmet back on and walk back out, pick up the rifle and go out and just go to work and start helping people again. So, it's, to not stray too far from, what you asked me to share, but I think this is important. It's in those times, I had seen some of the most impressive displays of character and just humanity in a good way, that humans can have towards each other. And I also we saw some of the worst, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You see the extremes, right?
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
See the extreme evil that's almost incomprehensible. And then you see the extreme heroics.
Yeah.
And that's got to be just crazy to take that all in. I can't imagine trying to sleep with, like what you said, you're already exhausted from everything you've been through. And for you, your second deployment, much different than the first deployment.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're absolutely exhausted, but there's no way you can sleep with that stuff going on. Or if you do, it's just a fitful 5-minute sleep. That's just, people need to understand how, your injuries aside, just what that takes and what that takes from you or brings out of you mentally. That's something that's pretty special in and of itself.
I appreciate that. And it's, what it is, I think the best way I've found to describe it maybe is that, we saw firsthand what people will succumb to when they truly face with genuine and true tyranny and oppression. And it's, for a lot of, for anyone who's watching this or listening, veteran or not, or a family member of a service member, it's hard for a lot of folks because the way that we pulled out, the attack by ISIS-K, the shame that the way we withdrew from Afghanistan was, there's no way around it. It was shameful. And, anyone who served there, it wasn't their fault. That's not their fault that we pulled out the way that we did. It's, it's higher than us. But what I like to, remind folks is that what happened in 2021, that affected the entire world for one. And specifically that affected the entire generation of global war on terrorism veterans, their family members, those Gold Star families, guys who are like, man, what did I go get shot over there for? What did I go lose my arm for? What did I go and shed blood over there for? What did my buddy die for? What did my son or daughter, get killed over there for? And then this is how we left. And I think the one thing that I can remind or, try and impart on folks listening or watching this is that at the end of the day, we gave those people, those children, those women, the men, even, like, we gave them a chance at opportunity, at an opportunity at life, whether it was for a year, a month, a day, an hour. I mean, over in that 20 years of war, we gave them even a glimpse. If it was just that, we gave them a chance and an opportunity to experience a life and a life at opportunity and freedom that they never would have otherwise. And Americans did that. Those of us who died, those Americans who died over there and allied nations alike. I mean, we did that, and we continue to do that each and every day. And, I know a lot of folks feel lost after what happened. And what I can say is, was it worth it? I don't know. I think that everyone's got to figure that out for themselves. But the lives that I helped and the people that I helped, and the fact that this happened to me specifically, like getting wounded, and it wasn't one of my guys, I'm grateful that it happened the way that it did. And, it wasn't one of my buddies in my position, or, the fact that I helped little kids and little girls and boys, come to our country. From the evacuation alone, it was 122,000 plus people, refugees that we brought to our nation or allied nations that have a chance at life and wow, true, genuine freedom and opportunity that they never would have had.
Yeah, brother. And you can't, obviously, as much as you want to, you can't save everybody.
Yeah.
But I think you and your brothers and sisters that were over there serving gave those people hope. Like you said, even if it was short-lived, because you can't control the outcome. All you can do is the best you can. And it sounds like that's obviously what you and everybody over there was doing for them. And I don't think it goes unnoticed. And it's hard to say, like you mentioned, like, is it worth it? I mean, I don't know who could answer that. I mean, if anyone could answer that, it would probably be you or someone who was very seriously injured. And to hear your take on it is very, very interesting, man. Very refreshing.
Well, I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Thanks for that. And I know that you are very outspoken, and I get that, like, part of that is because you want to speak, and you correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, brother, but you want to tell the story for your brothers and sisters who can't tell the story.
Absolutely.
And I know that you've testified in front of Congress. Is that correct?
Yes.
About what really happened, and how was that experience? And then what was the message that you were trying to get across?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's, for me, it's, people ask me this, all the time, whether it's friends or otherwise, like, what was it like? Or, how did I feel? And for me, even still, that was the only time in my life, I think, that I've like publicly spoke that I wasn't nervous. And I was just, all that I had in my mind, I was like, am I allowed to cuss on here?
Yes, sir. You can cuss.
I was like, these motherfuckers are going to listen to what I have to say. And, unfortunately, people think that, like, for me, me testifying like in 2023, for me, it's not. So many people all over the world, they continue to, they're like, oh man, that was incredible. That was the greatest thing. Even my friends who were killed, like their family members, like Gold Star parents, are like, think it's the most incredible thing. And for me, I'm like, what's sad is that accountability and servant leadership has so long been forgotten in our nation, in our nation's government, and our nation's military, that me standing before people and telling the truth about what happened, and not hiding it, and trying to say, like, hey, this is what happened, and people need to be held accountable for it, that it's so foreign that it seems like this incredible thing, but it's not. Someone with way more rank on their collar should have done it before me. And for me,
it's called leadership. Yeah. And it is a dying art, if you will.
Absolutely.
My background's law enforcement. I don't have a story near as interesting as yours, brother, but same thing you see in law enforcement too. A lot of times you're lacking that leadership, and it's hard as a line level officer when you know that not only is society, not society at large, because I think society at large does view law enforcement positively. They support law enforcement, but the ones that are vocal are the ones that are, demonizing law enforcement. And then you feel like kind of the whole world's against you. And then you feel like your administration might be against you. So then it's like you're terrified to even do your job. And when that's the case, the people that you're sworn to protect are the ones that suffer.
Yeah, absolutely.
It emboldens the criminals,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, unfortunately, I mean, you're 100% right. It's, I mean, the negativity is always the loudest, unfortunately. And like you said, I mean, that's the silent majority, as I've seen, even more in recent years, the silent majority is a very real thing. But, it's the hope is that we can continue and like sharing this story and you sharing your story and your views on it. I mean, it's the hope is that we can, prove that there's a reason to speak up and do better, because if we don't talk about the hard things, then we're never going to get better. It doesn't matter if it's a mistake I made, it's a mistake you made, it's a mistake we made, it's a mistake the president of the United States made. It's holding ourselves accountable and showing like, hey, yeah, these things happened, people died, but how can we learn from this and how can we get better? Because the same mistakes that are happening now are the same mistakes that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. And unfortunately, we don't learn most of the time. And it's, how do we, as Americans, as American people, I mean, it's finding ways to serve our community and our neighbors to the left and right of us in a positive way so that we can ultimately better our nation as a whole.
Yeah. And you had the opportunity to have this platform to speak about what really happened that day. What are the types of things that you wanted to get across to people who didn't know any more than what they saw in the news, which is quite frankly, almost all of us?
Yeah, no, I mean, so, to kind of sum up, like the day of, it was, I was down there with Hoover and we were pulling out an interpreter and his brother, and pulling out a family to bring over. And essentially we had been given intel saying who the bomber was, who he was traveling with the morning of, about 1:30, 2 in the morning. And, passed from various intelligence assets to us and matched up with various other entities that we were working with as well, had the same intel. And we, saw who fit the description in the crowd. And the best way to describe it is like, if I filled up this entire room with sand, that's how many people there were. I mean, it was quite literally hundreds of thousands of people surrounding, like 100 Marines. And, for us, we had spotted who we were past was the bomber, who we knew was the bomber. And, we verified with various other sets of eyes, various other entities that worked with us. And they were like, yeah, that's who fits the description. That's who he is. And that's who he's traveling with. And, denied engagement authority. And our, battalion leadership, was like, I don't know who has the authority to, allow you to engage, when ultimately it's, dissemination of leadership. It should have been on us, but we were told going in, you guys are not allowed to do anything. If something happens, like this is, you utilize your chain of command and request engagement authority. And we did that. And, ultimately tried halting we did halt operations for, 2 or 3 times that day alone, saying, hey, like this bomber's in the area. There's video evidence, there's photo evidence of, separately people took on their cell phones and stuff of like, hey, this is, like Reaper 2, our call sign, our team's call sign, like calling over the radio, like halt operations, the bombers in the area, like in the hours leading up. And, they just continued to, we'd stop for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then they'd push us back down. And, we were sent out there. And then next thing you know, this dude and who he's traveling with, the bomber, steps out of a crowd of 100,000 people 3 meters away from us and kills 200 people instantly. And 13 Americans, 11 Marines, 1 soldier, and 1 sailor, wounding 45 Americans. And I mean, it was a sea, like quite literally where hundreds of people stood shoulder to shoulder, was just completely flattened, body parts, blood everywhere, body matter everywhere, brain matter everywhere. And like, we started getting shot at from farther down the canal. We started getting shot at from the neighborhood. And recently CNN released the only GoPro footage that wasn't handed over or taken rather by the DOD. And all of these Gold Star families whose, children were killed in action, like they haven't been returned their phones. They haven't been returned their video footage from their GoPros. Like the government won't hand it over. And there's a reason why, but, every single person who wasn't out there, specifically our government, likes to say that things didn't happen the way they did, but all of us who were out there have pretty much the same story. And at the end of the day, that's what we all have to remind ourselves is like, for me, I know what happened. I was there, right? And my friends who were there, who got shot at, who got blown up, who shot back at the ISIS gunmen, like we know what happened, and that's what all that matters at the end of the day is that we know what happened in our hearts and minds because we were there, but that we continue to utilize the bad things that did happen and say, here's how we can be better, and here's what we can do and we can provide. And that's what I try and do each and every day. It's, I always like sharing this, and like we talked about right after you gave me the introduction, like sharing this story of what happened and continuing to try and impact. For me, I find the most fulfillment in impacting other people's lives in a positive way. It's one of the reasons I chose to enlist in the Marine Corps, other than being a red-blooded American that wants to go kill the bad guy. Like, I knew it was somewhere I could help other folks that were less fortunate. And, it's never an obligation to share my story. It's never an obligation, I would say, is the best way that I can put it. But it's a responsibility, because I have the ability to talk about it. I have the ability to live my life the way that I choose to. And, I'm a firm believer that weakness is a choice and happiness is a choice too. Like, there's plenty of things I don't want to do every day. There's plenty of reasons. Most would be like, yeah, like, I understand why you want to be a lazy piece of shit, or I understand why you just don't want to do anything, or, you want to be an asshole. Like, this happened to you, but that's not who I choose to be, because that's not who my friends who aren't here anymore would want me to be. They'd want me to continue living my life in a positive way and taking the most out of this life and trying to do the most good for other people. So that's ultimately, I think, out of all the bad, it's continuing to shed light on the truth and holding people accountable. Hopefully, I'm not a hopeful person, but we can try, and I'll at least be able to say that I died trying, to get some answers and hold people accountable. And even if it's just that I know I'm in a unique position where I've been given a significant platform online, and I get opportunities to speak every now and then, and there's nothing more important to me than that. It's like showing people, like, yeah, bad things can happen to you, but you can still come out on top.
Yeah, absolutely. I know mindset is critically important in virtually anything, but especially to get through the type of injury that you sustained and the type of things that you saw over there. And in law enforcement and military, there's a saying that, and I know you're very familiar with this one, you can't train too much for a job that can kill you.
Absolutely.
And maybe a civilian adaptation of that might be, just don't be a victim. I'm not a victim. Those two sayings seem to kind of sum up your whole being or your whole takeaway from this entire ordeal, and that you're taking what many would say is an absolutely horrific experience, and you're turning that into a positive thing where you can contribute and help other people that may be in a very bad place. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how important mindset was, and probably still is, in your recovery.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the, everyone who gets, wounded, or maybe they, get cancer, or they get hit by a car, or they get some sort of illness or injury. I mean, for me, and I know a lot of the wounded guys, everyone goes through it. Everyone deals with it differently. And what I like to share is that, pain, trauma, struggle, strife, grief, it's all relative to the things that you've been through in your life. And, I'll never diminish anyone else's trauma or, what they've gone through. But there's also, like you said, it's the whole never a victim. Like, there's a line where it's like, yeah, I feel sorry for myself. We've all felt sorry for ourselves, but I'm not going to, I'll never be a victim of what's happened to me. And, that's ISIS winning, right? That's like our government winning. That's anyone else out there who wanted to kill us, who wanted us to fail. Like that's them winning. And for me, like, choosing to be positive, like, it's the most important thing. And for me, what I like to share is that, who I am. I've grown a lot since getting wounded, but who I am today is who I was before I got blown up. And it goes along with, you can never train too hard for a job that can kill you. And I think it's important to remember, like you said, whether it's military, law enforcement, civilian or not, or otherwise, you could get hit by a car tomorrow. You're more likely to get hit by a car and die than be killed in combat, right? And here I am. Like, I've had friends that were killed in combat. I've been wounded. I died like 6 or 7 times and was flatlined and was resuscitated each and every time. And my surgeons and every person in my line of medical care told me throughout, the 45 surgeries, they're like, the only reason that you're alive, very obviously, other than like my friends that applied tourniquets to me and provided aid, and the medical personnel as well. They're like, the only reason you're alive is because of how physically fit you were at your point of injury. Like, you would not have survived. I was right in the center of the cone of fire of the blast. I mean, everyone to the left and to my right was dead. I was, my stomach was ripped open, left testicle exploded, right arm, left leg. Obviously they were there, but there wasn't much left of them. Arteries ripped open. I was hit with 150 steel ball bearings, liver, bladder, and liver, bladder, and I think spleen all lacerated and punctured. Left kidney was destroyed. I lost 157 centimeters in my large and small intestine. 2/3 of my transverse colon had pretty much completely bled out and gone into the last stage of shock. And they're like, we have no idea how this guy's alive, like at every point. And I went from 210 pounds to 110 pounds by the time I was like into the ICU from getting blown up. And it was just like surgery every day or every 2 days.
Yeah. Like almost 50 surgeries, right?
Yeah.
And 50 surgeries.
Yeah. It was 45.
Well, at what point did you wake up, Tyler? Like how long after this happened were you conscious or coherent?
So I was awake for pretty much all of it. I mean, I was
no kidding.
A lot of it was, I mean, I was awake, but I'm like incoherently slobbering and screaming and yelling at my buddies and stuff, but I can see what's going on, or I know what's going on. And towards the end of it, I was probably like actually, awake or in and out of consciousness for the first 15 minutes post blast up until like getting to the roll 2 to the hospital. And even then, like my, doctors were like, what do you remember from, like, the guys, people who worked on me, they're like, what do you remember from being there? And I was like, well, I remember being on the ground, people putting an intubation tube down my throat. And I was like screaming and yelling, wow, like, I can fucking breathe. And they're like saying, like, two people above me working on me and giving this detailed description of what happened as I'm on the ground or on the operating table there in Afghan. And they're like, yeah, what's crazy is all that happened, but you weren't really alive. Like, you weren't awake, your eyes weren't open, but your brain and your ears, you heard all of that and you remembered that's what happened, but you weren't awake. And so, I mean, it goes to show, like, I spent, my entire time in the Marine Corps training for what I thought was going to be a career in special operations. And, it was to prepare me for the worst day of my life. And, I'm proud to say that, like that, you can never train too hard for a job that can kill you, is something I always imparted on my junior Marines and my friends in the Corps. And, I'm proud to say that I lived that. And, I'm now a certified personal trainer. And I always joke, like, I'm a certified personal trainer. Not that it means shit if you don't know what you're talking about or understand it, but I went through that route through an organization called Warrior Strong Inc. And they kind of paid for me to get through my certified personal training, and then for me to go through my adaptive and inclusive trainer certification through the Adaptive Training Academy. So I'm qualified to train, program, scale for anyone with physical or intellectual disabilities. So for me, it's like, for the longest time, for years, my gym nearby, I was the only person, like, in my gym that I had ever seen in a wheelchair. And, I took a lot of pride in it, but it's like, it's also sad too, because, a lot of folks, especially who are physically or, maybe intellectually have disabilities, like, they don't know that they can continue to work out and continue to be fit and how important it is.
Or they're just intimidated, right? They're
Absolutely.
Just intimidated because there's no one else there like them.
Yeah, no, and you're 100% right. And so for me, that's why for so long, like, I every time I go out and do stuff, like, I force myself to go and do stuff, or, like, my fiance and I will go out and eat and stuff. And I internally, I'm like a very introverted person, but the way my life has gone in recent years, I kind of inevitably am in the, in the spotlight here and there and have to talk to people. And, and I appreciate it because I understand what the opportunity means. Like, I was in the Vancouver airport last year, going to hunt black bear in British Columbia with one of the guys from my sniper team. And nice. Some British dude just comes up to me and he's like, Sergeant Vargas-Andrews? And I was like, yes. And he's like, hey, mate, how's it going? Like, thank you for everything you've done. And I was just like, what the hell? But for me, every time I fly, anytime I travel to another state, another city, even, I mean, I meet at least one person every single time I travel somewhere who's like, knows me, knows the story of what happened. That means they know the story of my friends who aren't here anymore, and everyone that was affected by that. So it's incredible. I mean, it's I think I got a little off topic there, but yeah, it's
no, dude, that's freaking awesome. Talk a little bit, brother, about how hard it was to adapt to, obviously you're very physically fit now, and you were very physically fit before. But how is that, dude? I mean, I can't even imagine now you have 2 limbs less than you had before. So were you able to kind of just kind of figure some of that stuff out on your own? Or how did you learn how to maintain that level of fitness after your injury?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, it's it's been tough for sure. Every day is like I'm figuring something new out, but I think the hardest thing for me personally has been the kind of the tempo, because I like strength wise, due to all the injury. I mean, I have my left arm, but it's probably at like 50% function in my hand and stuff, and tons of nerve damage and whatnot, like ball bearings that went through it. And for me, it at first I would say it was like oh man, like I'll never be able to, push the same amount of weight. I'll never be able to pick up the same amount of weight, move the same way. And so for me, that was like the hard part, is like, all right, it was more of a hit to my pride than anything. I'm like, man, this sucks, because also I have so much internal organ damage and to my intestines specifically. I can't put on weight really more than I'm already at. I have like a permanent ostomy right now. So like I have a colostomy bag that I have like on me. The best way I describe it is like my intestines are straight piped like through my abdomen pretty much, and don't process nutrients and stuff. So a lot of it's been that, finding like what foods I can absorb and whatnot. But
like supplements and stuff too. Do you take a lot of supplements?
I don't. So I don't take any medication at all. Like I was in ICU, and as soon as I got out, I was like, take me off everything. Don't take any medication. The only supplements I take is like fish oil and protein powder, and that's it. But for the most part, it's just like trying to find the right like whole foods and whatnot to eat that'll actually absorb. Just because I'll eat, and depending on what it is, like I'll process it out within like 10 minutes, and it's my body's not absorbing it at all.
You're not getting the nutrients.
Yeah. So it's like eating, 7-8 times a day. That's a big challenge. But, I also had it was like the muscle memory and foundation of like, I was also eating like 7-8 times a day before, because I was trying to maintain my calories, maintain my macros and whatnot. So it's like give and take, but, actually like physically working out, it's tough. It's tough, but I don't know. I take a lot of pride in it, because it's like, I figured it out. I don't know. I think I was talking to one of my TBI therapists a couple of years ago. I was like, I want to get a clinical study done on like neuroplasticity and amputees, and like active amputees, because I feel like my critical thinking skills have developed, a lot more and in certain ways, because every day I'm having to figure things out, and not saying like, oh, I'm the smartest guy or whatever. But I think that like my ability to figure things out has increased significantly, because that's what I have to do all day long. It's like, how do I changed my entire, disposal, like garbage disposal a couple years ago, one-handed, like stuff like that, or like a year ago. And
I can barely do that with two hands, bro. I need a third hand.
No, it's tough, but it's stuff like that. It's, I think it's tough, but it's worth it at the end of the day. And it's like, same thing. Every time I figure something out, it helps me push that for someone else. Like, hey, you've got this thing you're trying to figure out. Or even just like my regular able-bodied friends, they're like, oh, I can't do that. Or like, my friends and my family, like they view me as Tyler, right? They don't view me as like a double amputee. Like I never like introduce myself as a double amputee, because, I'm just like, I'm Tyler. But, they are inspired, and obviously I've seen the direct impact and a lot of the indirect impact, I guess, I've had, with a social media platform and stuff, of like, I mean, tens of thousands of people reaching out, and like hundreds even, like, you're the reason I didn't kill myself today, and you're the reason that I fucking went to the gym today. Like even that, I'm like, yeah, man, that's why I fucking do it right there. Like that is the reason why. Like,
bro, one of those has got to be, it makes it worth it, man.
Absolutely.
It makes everything worth it by getting one of those, and you're getting multiple of those. That just tells you what an impact you're having on people. You mentioned your family, and I know that family is where we can get a lot of support whenever the chips are down. So talk a little bit about that, if you will, brother. Like, how did your family respond to you being injured and the recovery and all of that, and how important was that to you in your recovery?
Absolutely, yeah. So my mom raised me and my siblings as a single mother pretty much our entire lives. And the DOD actually called. My little brother was sitting actually on the couch, technically like the day before, like early in the morning. I think we were 16, 17 hours ahead in Afghanistan, and they're in Northern California. But he's sitting on the couch. My mom's making a breakfast before school, and he goes, "Hey, Mom, like, isn't that where Ty is?" And points to TV, and it says there's a bombing at the gate. And so within that day, in the next, 6 hours of that, she gets a call. The DOD calls her and says, they kept using the term like he's very critically ill, very critically injured. That's what they were saying. And they're like, he's going to be getting transported like over the next day. He's going to be getting transported to Germany, to launch stool, but like, don't come, stay where you're at. Like, you're going to pass his body in the air. Like, he's going to die. And my mom was like, F that, I'm going, that's my son. And, they were like, they literally straight up told her, she has a voicemail recording of this. They told her like, we can't promise you that we're going to reimburse you. And she was like, I don't fucking care. So she, dropped $7,000 on a flight or flights and flew over there to Germany, met me. And then also like, I died 2 or 3 times there. Flatliner was resuscitated. They brought her in to say goodbye. And then Colonel Graham, who was formerly, I don't know if he still is, but he was formerly the 1st Marine Regiment commander. He was like, what do you need, to my mom? And she was like, you get his best friend here, like right now. And he was Christian Ritter. He was in Victor 1-1. So we were in like sister units pretty much in our regiment. And we always deployed within about 2 months of each other. But I'm the goddaughter to both of his children, or godfather, to both of his children. And so they flew him out. They cut him orders, flew him out to meet us at Walter Reed. And they flew me from Germany to there, Germany to Andrews. Andrews drove up to Andrews Air Force Base, up to Walter Reed. And he was a rock for her. But my mom was, my biggest advocate the entire time I was in the hospital. I woke up, you asked, like, I think that's what I kind of skimmed over. But you asked, like, when did you come to again or whatever? It was pretty much 4 days. So like once I went down on the 26th, they induced me into a coma, medical sedation. And then they woke me up like 4 days or so afterwards. My mom flew with me on the C-17, like I'm there in a hospital bed on the C-17 as the team's trying to keep me alive, all the flight medics and whatnot, all the way to the US. And she's sitting right there. And like, there's like there was an Afghan like mother that was there, and there's like 3 or 4 other beds that are in front of her and like right next to mine, and the hospital bed's on the plane. And so my mom goes over to her, and they're both like kind of crying and stuff, and my mom's like kind of motioning, like pointing to like the beds where her children are, like saying, are these your children? And she's like confirming that. And my mom like points over to me and like, this is my son. And they just like sat the rest of the flight together and like held hands. And there were 3 kids that got wounded in the bombing as well. And we got back, and the DOD, throughout that, there's a lot of battles with the DOD and with the Marine Corps. Certain elements of the Marine Corps, say more like the Wounded Warrior Regiment and whatnot. And things not getting done. And I had some of the most incredible medical providers in the world, but there was like some of the policy too, like, they go, hey, it's COVID. Like your friend, you cannot have any visitors at the hospital. Like you cannot have any visitors at all. Like, we don't care that they were your friends and they thought like all my friends, fucking said goodbye to me, like in that moment. And they're like, you can't have anyone. And my mom, stood up to the like nurse director of the hospital, and she's like, you better let him have like someone here. And, I can't get out of bed. All I can do is like turn my head, and that's it. And I'm like whisper yelling because my vocal cords got damaged from all the sedation and intubation and whatnot. But yeah, she was my advocate. She stayed with me for 6 months or so. Like I was in the hospital for about 4.5, just because of the amount of surgeries and whatnot. And then I got out of the hospital. It was probably, a month or 2 later. And I was like, hey, Mom, I love you, but I'm a grown ass man. Like, I need you to go home. But she was there for me, and my siblings came, and it screwed up a lot of their high school and middle school as well. I mean, they came over and they stayed with me. The Yellow Ribbon Fund put them up. And that's like one of those things like where the DOD lacks, unfortunately. Like the Yellow Ribbon Fund is the one, it's an organization outside of the military that put my mom and siblings up in an apartment down the street from Walter Reed. She stayed there as my advocate all through all my medical stuff while I was in the hospital. And, they like kind of to allude, or kind of to answer one of the things that you asked is like, for me, I watched my mom raise 3 siblings, me and my 2 siblings. as a single mother her whole life. She had me at 19. I watched her go through all of law school. I was a kid. She was pretty much a kid. Like I watched her graduate the bar for the first time, watched her, build her entire practice, file bankruptcy, rebuild her own entire firm after dealing with my biological father and all the things that happened there, and our lives being flipped upside down, and her having every reason to quit and every excuse to give up, and she never did. And so for me, my entire life and in late teenage or early teenage years and whatnot, I was like, well, like I want to go be a Marine. And then it just kind of instilled that foundation in me, like quitting's never been an option. And I remember I was in the hospital, and I'll kind of leave it on this piece of the family stuff, but I was in the hospital, just gotten out of the ICU into inpatient, and I'm laying in my bed, and like I told him, like I was like, hey, like take me off all my opiates, all my narcotics and stuff. And they're like, we can't do that. And I was like, yes, you fucking can. Like it's my body. I don't want to be on any of that. And our entire family has a history of substance abuse and addiction. And so I just knew, I was like, I don't want to be anywhere near that. And I don't want to have to rely on it.
And you don't want to deal with that on top of what you're already dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Totally. And I see a lot of, not even, obviously it's more than just veterans, but I've seen a lot of wounded guys that struggle with that, and guys and gals that struggle with substance abuse. And just, you kind of, it's a cycle. It's just a cycle of the way that things go, unfortunately. But, and so right when I got out of the ICU, my mom's like, Bud, like you're going to walk again. You're going to hike again. You're going to hunt again. You're going to shoot. You're going to do all the things that you love to do. And I just laughed, and I was like, yeah, I know, Mom. Like, you don't got to tell me that. And she just started cracking up, and she's like, yeah, you're definitely my son. And I was just like, yeah, I'm still me, Mom. Like, I know I got all this going on, but it's, for me, it was never an option. And like I said earlier, who I am today is who I was before I got blown up. I've grown in a lot of ways. That's all we can hope for, is that we grow in positive ways. But, I'm proud to say that, one, the Marine Corps shaped me into the man that I'm proud of today. And, it instilled, I chose to go on the path of the Marine Corps because of what I thought I would get out of it. And I got so much more than that. And, knowing everything that happened today, leading up to today, and us having this conversation, if I knew it was going to happen, I wouldn't have changed it for the world. It's enlisting in the United States Marine Corps, and, maybe they'll pay me one day to say this, but it's still to this day the best decision that I've ever made in my life. And there's a lot of shit wrong. There's a lot of things I don't agree with, and there's a lot of things I'll continue to be vocal about. And the Marine Corps definitely doesn't like me saying, and the DOD, the government as a whole, doesn't like me saying, but that's the reality of the way things go. Like I'm going to keep telling the truth and keep trying to push for accountability, and more and above anything else, continue to try and make a positive impact on other people's lives, because we, a lot of us need it. And, I've had plenty of mentors and guides in my life. Like when it's like, I don't know how to do something, whether it's physical or mental, that's what I say is like my one tool for the toolbox is like, when you feel the most alone and down and lost, and, and I think I'm fortunate enough to say, like, I had some hard moments in the hospital, but it was never like something where I like gave up. It was just like, man, it was more of like the having to let go of like, I'll never be able to do my job again. And that was what it was for me, is like getting through that is like, I'll never be able to do that again. And there's no way around that. And that's okay. And I accepted that. And I learned to accept that. And I do today, but I know that the reason I'm here is because I'm meant to impact people's lives in a positive way with, the horrible things, that I've been through. Relatively speaking, I've gone through physically harder things than almost anyone else will go through in their life. And, I'm like, I've never once stopped living my life since getting wounded. I've slowed down a little bit. I'm not going to be, racing anyone on a track anytime soon, but, I still do everything that I love to do, and before, and I've done even more since.
Yeah. You've done some incredible stuff like scuba, right? You do scuba diving. And
I got, through another organization I got connected to through Walter Reed, the adaptive sports program over there. Harvey is the head over there. He runs it, like kind of head of the occupational therapy. And he connected me to Ranger Road, who their founder is Mikhail Venikov, former Ranger, Ranger Bat dude, and one of the best, absolute hands down best human beings I've ever met. And the first time I met him was, they were like, hey, there's a scuba trip. Like, we don't even know if you're medically allowed to do this, but as long as some doctor signs off on your, like saying you're okay, like you can go. And I was like, well, I've got I had a a 65% hole in my eardrum, like ruptured, it completely ripped through. I was like, that's the only concern. And they're like, all right, well, you're going to probably need a surgery for that. So I scheduled a surgery. They grafted skin from my cartilage or whatever, and then like healed it. And they're like, yeah, I think you're good enough. Like did the little pressure test in my ears. And then
what's one more surgery, right? After?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a quick one too. And so I, for me, like in all my surgeries, kind of a funny thing, I guess a little bit of comedic relief is that I would, I had so many surgeries and so many times I was under sedation and anesthesia. I was like, they would start pushing it. And like, I had a lot of the same anesthesiologists like over and over and over. So I would see how many times I could get through the alphabet before I passed out once they started pushing anesthesia. And like, I'd say probably like at least half, if not like 3/4 of my surgeries, I would wake up like in the middle of all the time. I'd be like, hey, can you put me back to sleep? And I'm like, oh, shit. And, they push it, but it's just like,
is it because you just kind of, your body gets inured to it because it's that's so many surgeries?
Yeah, that's what they kind of think. That's what I think. And I also just kind of always had I think like because of how fast my metabolism was beforehand, also from like, I had, 23 years of playing sports and, like using Tylenol because my leg's broken and stuff like that or whatever. Like, they kind of get used to it and whatnot. Yeah. But so that, and then I just lost my train of thought there, but yeah.
No, that's awesome stuff, man. Hey, where can people go to find out more about what you're up to and what you have going on? Because your story is absolutely, I mean, I'm so fortunate that you came on, and our listeners, I know, and our viewers are going to love your story, brother. It's just absolutely inspirational. So where can people go to follow you and support the things that you're doing?
Just on Instagram is at Whistling Death, WHISTLINGDEATH. And, people always were like, oh man, that's a cool, like username and stuff. And like, always think it relates to like me getting blown up or something like that, but it's the Instagram name I've had forever. And it's the Corsair from World War II. When it would dive bomb, like the fighter jet would dive bomb, it would whistle. And so they would call it, like the enemy would call it Whistling Death. And so I just love that. I grew up wanting to be a fighter pilot my whole life, found out I was color deficient, but it actually like whistles as it's nose down dive bombing on people. So that's, Whistling Death. And then, Tyrant Design on Instagram as well. Pretty much from my Instagram, you can find, and it's connected to my Facebook, you can find anything. But yeah, no, funny. I have can I show my gun on here?
Of course, brother.
So I was really, really shocked at one, Samantha reached out. That was really cool. It's always cool when I see that my link tree is actually like utilized.
Absolutely, man.
Mission stuff. But I've been running Aimpoint on my AR for my main AR for forever. But so I was like, wow, that's pretty sick. So yeah, that
is sweet, bro.
Yeah, my buddies, they're called the Gun Brothers. They're out of Texas, and they give back to vets, service members, their families. They take them out for hunts. They don't charge anything. They don't do it for money. They're a couple of like literally 2-man crew, 3-man crew kind of. And they just make some pretty premium ARs, and they bring vets out to hunt and shoot, and just like, hey, like come on our dime and like, have fun, do whatever you want, like on our ranch and hang out and just, get away. And so they become some of my dearest friends. But yeah, I was telling them, I was like, hey, I'm going to be going on the Aimpoint's podcast today. And they're like, no way.
That's awesome, brother. There's so many good people in the world, man. And you're obviously one of them. And I was so excited and happy to have you on here today, brother. Yeah. So hopefully we'll keep in touch, man. And I know that the viewers and listeners are going to want to follow what you're up to. So
no, I appreciate that very much, Richard. It means a lot, truly. I'm very grateful for your time, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you, brother. I certainly appreciate it. Well, folks, that's a wrap for this episode with Tyler Vargas-Andrews. If this story didn't resonate with you, you're not human, so I don't know what to tell you. But be sure and leave us a comment, and also don't forget to like and subscribe to Aimpoint's Taking Aim Podcast. We'll see you next time.